Hey guys. Hello. Hello everyone. I'm Alina. I hope you're doing well and are having a great day. I see you are still joining. Hello Sarah. Hey guys. Hi Cher, Paul, Maxime. Thank you for joining us today. Are you ready to learn, engage, and gain valuable insights from our speaker? Okay, let's get acquainted. I'm Alina Prohoda, and I'm social media marketing and community specialist at Serpstat, the growth hacking tool for search marketing. Let me tell you about our platform and the webinars briefly. More than 50 tools are available here for search marketing purposes. With Serpstat, it's easy to analyze websites and competitors, create SEO content, collect keywords, and track their rankings on a daily basis. And there is also a free 7-day trial to test this feature out. Um, why attend Serpstat webinars? Digital marketing experts and thought leaders cover hot topics at our live events. They provide SEO agencies, in-house teams, freelancers, and business owners with practical advice and techniques to improve their online presence, increase visibility, and drive more website traffic and conversions. Thus, it's a great way to stay up to date on the latest trends and best practices in digital marketing. And today we are covering how to communicate SEO with clients effectively and gain their trust. I'd like to talk a little bit more about the format. It will last about 50 minutes, and you are welcome to ask questions in the live chat on YouTube. And in the Q&A, our speaker will answer them. And we will send the webinar materials to every registered attendee to their email. So don't forget to register if you haven't already. I'll send the page to the chat. Just a moment. It's here. Hi, guys. I see you are still joining. Happy to see you here. Great. And let's meet our speaker. Hey, Sophie.
Hey,
How are
hey,
you?
hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining.
Great. How's your day?
Yeah, really good. Thanks, Alina. How's yours been?
Oh, I'm really excited about our today's live. I'm thrilled to have you as our speaker with such a fascinating topic. And let me introduce you briefly to our attendees. Sophie has worked in the SEO industry agency side for the past 7 years, even more, including as client services director. She has led SEO campaigns for a range of businesses, from small startups to multinationals in highly competitive industries. Sophie focuses on delivering ROI and showcasing the value of SEO as a digital channel, helping businesses to attract, engage, and convert their site visitors. As Sophie will share with us today, she has prepared a lot of useful tips on effective communication with clients. You can be so smart, creative SEO, but if you can communicate properly with clients and stakeholders, getting new and retaining existing ones will be a challenge. So, want to learn how to deal with it easily, guys? Can't wait to learn more about that too. So, prepare your questions and enjoy the topic. The mic is yours, Sophie.
Thank you so much, Alina, and thank you everyone for joining today. As Alina said, we're going to be talking a bit about how to communicate SEO with clients really effectively. It's an area that I feel a lot of SEOs tend to struggle with. You could be the most technical person, you could be incredibly creative, you could have some of the best SEO strategies, but if you can't communicate this, the results or kind of the work you're doing with clients, that's where things are really going to start falling through. So Alina did a fantastic introduction to me, but just to kind of cover that off in a little bit more detail. So I'm the Director of SEO at a company called Rush Oddities, which is an American e-commerce website. I used to work agency side and worked there for about 7.5 years. And my background has covered very extensive SEO strategies across the UK, the US, and the Australian markets. I'm an awards judge. I'm an industry speaker. I've done lots of events like BrightonSEO and WeLoveSEO Paris, and I've been featured in lots of articles and books and things like that. So the kind of things I'm going to be talking you through today is things around the value of communication, SEO testing, managing risk, how to position yourself as the expert, and effective SEO reporting, and just summarizing all of that with some key takeaways right at the end for you to take away and start implementing straight away. So let's kick this off then with the value of communication. So when it comes to communication and SEO, what we're actually trying to communicate is a number of different things, a number of different areas. So we're looking at how our clients can really understand and be aware of the success that we're really helping to drive for them with all areas of their SEO strategy. We're trying to communicate knowledge. We're trying to fill their knowledge gaps. We're trying to really showcase to them what it is that we're trying to implement, but also areas that maybe they have not got any knowledge of at all. We're trying to also lead to action. So we're communicating SEO in a way that's going to get things done for us, whether that's communicating with development teams, or maybe that's getting sign off for certain projects or certain elements of a strategy. We really want to communicate that action. We need to try and develop our buy-in, really trying to get our clients and anyone that we're working with on board with the things that we're trying to do. And we're also trying to communicate that strategic focus, because ultimately, if you are missing that communication element, you're going to be missing out on what your core objectives of your strategy is going to be, and really what your clients are going to be measuring your success against. Without all of those different things, you have no strategy. So one of the most important things to consider is how personalized communication needs to be. You really need to be focusing on who you're talking to, not necessarily what you're talking about. Now, when it comes to that, how we personalize things is going to be dependent on kind of the job title and kind of the knowledge and experience that the person you're talking to is going to be, but also kind of what we're trying to communicate as well. So normally in SEO, there's 3 main reasons that we're trying to talk to our clients and what we're trying to talk to them about. One of those things is action, because we want something to actually be done. So like I mentioned earlier, could that be the next phase of a strategy? Or that could be potentially talking to developers to try and action some of our technical SEO recommendations, which can often be a challenge in itself. Or it can just simply be signing off on an upsell or a project, or really just making sure that we're able to do the things that we want to do. It could also be us trying to communicate our successes. So that could be in the form of reporting. It could be showcasing the work we're doing and having real accountability for what we've actually actioned on the site and what that's then achieved. And then sometimes we're trying to communicate selling an idea, selling and upselling, cross-selling, trying to get more buy-in, more resource, so we can actually do a bigger and better job for our clients. But how do we communicate all of these different things? Now, as I mentioned earlier, it's really going to depend on the audience and the people that you're trying to talk to. So how you speak to a C-suite individual, a CEO, a CMO, someone with very little knowledge about SEO in particular, is going to be a lot different to how you may talk to a developer or to a fellow SEO about the work that you're doing. There's a number of different mediums that we can use to communicate with people. Of course, phone calls, emails, it could be quarterly business reviews or monthly business review documents. It could be within your reports, particularly if the person at the end of the kind of communication channel isn't really that active in terms of getting face-to-face meetings or phone calls or emails. Sometimes all of your communication efforts are going to be just within the documentation at the end of the month. And sometimes we're trying to communicate through a project management tool or a ticket system, particularly when working with developers. So you really need to consider who it is at the end of the line and really action the different types of communication based on what's going to be most beneficial to them. So how can we do this a lot better? One of the most important things when it comes to communicating SEO is avoiding being too jargon heavy and really just not assuming that they already understand what you're talking about. This is often kind of a hole that I find a lot of SEOs will get themselves into, because you're doing SEO every day. You're doing technical, you're doing offsite and link building, you're doing digital PR, you're doing content creation, you're doing keyword research and strategy. No matter what it is, when you're doing that day in and day out, you kind of become a little less aware of the jargon that you're using, the terminology and things like that, particularly if you're working within a wider team that do a very similar role to you or have a very similar understanding. So when it comes to communicating that out with clients and with people who maybe are not as aware of SEO as what you are, or don't have a similar type of knowledge as to what you do, really being too jargon heavy, even accidentally, can really throw them off, and they may not actually have any idea of what you're talking about and could just kind of nod along. But when they don't have that clear understanding, that's when they're going to switch off and really not be bought into that. You also need to explain the why behind what you're recommending. So a lot of the time I find, particularly in reporting, and I will cover reporting in a little bit more detail later on, but a lot of the time we will recommend something, but we don't explain the why. What impact is that going to have? Why is this important? And that's really the main point, that a C-suite individual, someone who's going to be giving you that buy-in to get your project signed off or to get your kind of implementations actioned, that's what they really need to know. Why is it important and why does it matter to me? So really communicate that to them. When you are communicating, tell a bit of a story. They don't want fluff. They don't want once upon a time, anything like that. But you need to be able to really showcase it to them in a way that they're going to understand. And an easy way to do that is to tell a story and pull it back to something that they can kind of connect with. And also providing tangible documentation. One of the main things with SEO is that it's a very intangible industry. A lot of the times you can't actually really showcase much other than maybe a piece of content or we made a technical change, but you don't really go into too much detail about that because that's where things can get a bit confusing for people who don't have that knowledge. So having real tangible documentation, such as a report or such as a monthly business review, quarterly business review, that really ties together those loose ends of this is where you were, this is what we've done to improve that, and this is where you are now. And a lot of the times as well, this is where it kind of hasn't gone right, and this is the things we want to be doing to improve that within a form of documentation can be really, really important. Alongside that, away from just reports and away from kind of business reviews and different areas of documentation in that sense, having just agendas for phone calls, having kind of meeting minutes afterwards, and after every single call and every single form of communication you have something in writing that they can refer back to. This is really important, particularly when you're not dealing with a marketing person, because there's probably 100 other things that these people are doing and that they're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. They're not going to remember the intricacies of every detail that you've kind of discussed on a phone call. So really having that tangible reference point for them to go back to at all times is going to really help in terms of getting that buy-in. So the next thing that we can talk about is SEO testing. Now, this is something I'm a really big fan of, and it's something I've been doing a lot more. And it's a really nice way to get buy-in from clients in order to get your kind of hypotheses actioned and the things you want actioned. So with SEO testing, you can get a real good chance to conduct tests against groups of URLs, or you can use it to test page title changes and tweaks, even anything up to a small color change or an update to a meta tag, additional content on a page. All of these different areas, you can actually test to see whether the decisions you want to make and the things you want to happen are actually going to be of a benefit or not. And it allows you to make those decisions backed by data. So people can't argue with the numbers. They can't argue with data, but they can argue with you if you say, I want to add 500 words or 1,000 words of content onto a page because I think it's going to do better. Having this SEO testing process in place, particularly with really difficult clients, and a lot of the time clients that may not like to action anything to do with SEO because they think it's going to impact their brand or their website, even just from a visual perspective. Doing SEO testing is a really easy way to kind of get that buy-in because you're backing all of your hypotheses with data. And there's a number of different things that you can test with this. Content refreshes, like I mentioned earlier, updating content, adding content. You can look at improvements to click-through rates. Is updating a page title or a meta description on a group of URLs or a single URL really going to help? Do we need to improve our internal linking, structured data? Can we test this before we implement it across a whole site and really cause a lot of work for a development team? Is that resource really necessary? Is it going to make much of a difference? Design, structure, readability, image optimization and usage throughout a page, adding videos to a site, adding quotes, adding all of these different areas, or even just taking them away. Testing all of these different things is going to really help you to get a nice, clear understanding of the impact that you're potentially going to have if you do these things and action them. And if it's a positive one and you have the data to back you up behind that, then you've got much more of an argument to push forward with, particularly with people who tend to put a bit of a barrier up against you. So how do we conduct these tests? So there's a number of different tools out there. Google Optimize was one of my favorite ones, but unfortunately it is being sunset this year, I think around September time. So more recently, I've moved to a tool called SEOtesting.com, and this is a really fantastic tool. I was really lucky. I spoke to Nick, who owns and runs SEO testing, and he did give me a few examples of some of the different ways that you can use the tool so I could show you guys today. And one of these examples is a content rewrite test. So this is a nice, clear visual understanding of, we wanted to rewrite the content. This is where we were before as a benchmark, and this is what we could potentially achieve once we rewrite the content. And this was a real actionable way to say, excuse me, decision maker, I want to rewrite the content. If we do this, this is the impact that it's going to have. And here's the data to back this up. It's really hard for a decision maker to say no to that. Another example is a split test on page title tweaks. Is it going to improve click-through rates? Year and month added to a page title. Does that make much of a difference? Is it going to improve ranking, visibility, and click-throughs? In this example, yes, it did. But they were able to take this away and say, we've tested this. There is a really large click difference between the different groups of URLs that we've tested and the different types of content. So let's roll this out across the site before using all of that time, using all of that resource, and ultimately using that budget, because a lot of clients will be looking at what is the resource and the financial impact of these changes and what's going to happen if we do this versus if we don't. If you've got the data that's going to back all that up for you, you're more than likely going to get that buy-in. So the business use cases for doing SEO testing, which can really help with buy-in and really help with that ultimately communication with your SEO clients to get what you need done, is because you can figure out what works, what doesn't work, and you can scale that up. You can avoid really costly mistakes. Generally, a lot of small business owners, people who are in the C-suite level, are going to be looking at budget. They're going to be looking at their finances and their bottom line. That's what they're going to care most about. So if you can avoid costly mistakes by testing first and showcasing that in the data, then that's going to be a really nice way to use this to your advantage. You can also discover more opportunities. So you may have your own hypotheses about the way Google's going to be interpreting something, particularly with the way generative AI is going in the future and all of the changes that Google's bringing out. If you have your own hypotheses for the way things are going to go and you want to action something based on that hypothesis, well, you can discover those opportunities and actually prove them right or potentially prove them wrong with SEO testing. And it can be an ongoing process as well. As I said, you can base those decisions on data instead of base them on opinions. And ultimately, you can justify retainers if you're agency side, or you can justify an ongoing project and being able to focus your time and your efforts on the things that you, as an expert, believe matter, but that maybe you weren't getting the buy-in for before. So it's definitely something to consider to help really improve that communication and that trust element between you and clients or stakeholders. So the next point in this presentation is about managing risk. So ultimately, clients and stakeholders, they don't like to be caught out with anything, whether that's your marketing, whether that's just business, whether that's just the way the world is going. A lot of people were caught out with COVID-19 and all of these other different areas and things that have changed over time. It's not fun and businesses don't like it. It really impacts their bottom line. And when it comes to us SEOs, and I think this is something a lot of SEOs need to hear, There's only so many times that you can blame an algorithm update for something not working. Now, that is a very valid reason for potential visibility declines or anything like that. And 100%, the algorithms can have can cause a lot of havoc. But there's only so many times you can blame that before a stakeholder or a client is going to turn around and say, well, maybe you don't actually know what you're doing then. So how can you manage risk in SEO? Well, firstly, be prepared for advancements and changes. A lot of the time, Google gives us a lot of indications about all of the different things they're going to be changing or could potentially be changing, whether that's updates in their documentation, whether that's their big Google I/O conferences and the announcement that they've made there. Be really prepared for this, but also be honest, be transparent, and be really upfront with clients and stakeholders at all times. If you're keeping them in the dark because you're maybe not 100% sure what's going to happen, consider from their perspective, once that does eventually roll out, but they potentially had no idea, or they're coming to you with that information rather than you going to them, it's not really showcasing yourself as the expert. So being really prepared for those advancements and for those changes and being upfront and honest about those different areas can really help with building that trust and building that relationship. And you can also manage risk in SEO by nurturing stronger relationships with connected departments. So you may be an SEO that has to work with a development team, either on-site or off-site, potentially client-side if you're working agencies, or maybe even a completely separate web development team. And the same goes with PR, social media, any of these interconnected departments, paid social and paid media as well. If you can nurture really strong relationships with these people, then you're more likely to get what you need done very quickly, particularly when it comes to dev changes and technical SEO changes. If you can work out how they like to work and you can kind of connect with that and map out a bit of a side-by-side collaboration plan, then you're probably going to get a lot more buy-in from your client and also from the people who can get what you need done a lot quicker. And how can you then manage risk when you're rolling out different changes? So if you're a technical SEO that is a very hands-on tech SEO and you do a lot of this work yourself, or you're a web developer that works very closely with SEOs, having different testing environments can really help to make sure that you're not rolling out a huge amount of changes that's potentially going to impact the site on a long-term basis. Now, when you speak to a lot of SEOs, 9 times out of 10, their biggest SEO nightmare has been when a website migration has gone wrong. And most of the time, that's because there's not been proper testing in place. There hasn't been different testing environments. There's been bugs. There's been devs kind of doing non-SEO things and SEOs not really giving the information to the devs that they needed to get these things done. So in order to manage risk, have these different testing environments. Typically, you'll need maybe 3 out of the 4 that I've listed here. So a local environment for kind of local testing to be done by developers and code changes, either a development or a staging, or you can have both. There's plenty of different examples of where both have been used very, very easily. And then a production, which is your live site. But then take that one step further and have tracking set up on these as well to really monitor these environments. So you know if a change has been kind of rolled out on a development version or a local version or a staging site, then you can actually track to see whether that's had a really significant impact. For example, if the tracking's been completely removed from the site, which is something I've seen happen more than once, or if the whole site's been completely no indexed, things like that, and you're just not getting any kind of traffic to it at all. Having all of that tracking set up and really monitoring that over time is going to help to manage risk when you're rolling out any kind of development changes. So the next area I wanted to talk about was about how you can actually showcase your expertise. Now, to showcase your expertise, you must first position yourself as an expert. And when you've been in the industry for a long time, even if you've only been in the industry for a year or two, generally you've got much better expertise than most of the time the people that you're kind of communicating with and your clients and stakeholders that might have no knowledge of SEO whatsoever. But they really need to be brought into that. And that's really where the difficulties lie. So how can you position yourself as an expert? So the first thing to remember is you only really get one good chance to make a good impression. Now, if you really do mess that up, that could put you on a bit of a back foot for the rest of the kind of campaign. That doesn't mean it's non-recoverable, but if you can go in and make a really good first impression, because you're showcasing your skills, you're showcasing your expertise in the steps that are to follow, then you're going to really help yourself and get yourself in a bit of the forefront. One of the ways you can do this is to avoid phrases that make you seem really uncertain. Now, it's something that psychologically we don't tend to pick up, and as part of everyday life, we will typically say different phrases that will make you sound uncertain to other people, but you may not notice yourself. Now, a couple of examples of these are things like, I think. I think this is the right thing to do. I think this is the way forward. I think you should choose this or you should do that. Avoiding things like I think and replacing them with other different phrases, such as I would recommend, or in my experience, or from what I've seen, rather than going down the I think route, it just makes you sound a lot more certain and a lot more confident in yourself. And one of my other biggest bugbears is I'm sorry, or just any kind of way of apologizing that you can kind of consider. Avoid it. Try not to say it. And it's something we all do naturally. I do it every day. For all different reasons. I could walk into a table and say sorry to the table. But really making sure that you're avoiding these different phrases can help you to be a lot more confident, and it can help you come across as a lot more confident in yourself and what you're saying as well. And the other way to position yourself as an expert is to read the room and to not overcomplicate a subject matter. Be really aware of who you're talking to and how they're responding to that. So this is a lot easier face to face, but in a world that's very much remote first now, you're having to take some of those skills that you may have had and been able to do very easily face to face and try and do that on a screen. So even just things like, are they disinterested? Are they confused, but they're just kind of nodding along and just smiling, but actually there's no one behind the smile, like they've completely been lost about 10 minutes ago. Just as long as you're not overcomplicating things and you're pulling it back to examples and pulling those conversations back to anything that could pull the client back into the conversation, such as their business goals, or such as a particular challenge that they've kind of told you that they really want to kind of face, or pulling it back to a competitor or a live example of their site as it currently is, and not overcomplicating that and not using too much jargon. That's really going to help you to position yourself as an expert, but also allow them to really feed into that as well. You can also really show your passion. Now, when you're an expert in something, it normally means you're pretty good at it. So be passionate about that. Really showcase that. Really talk about it in an excited way. It's something that you love. It's something you're passionate about. Show that to the client. Show empathy as well. If there is also a particular challenge that they've really struggled with, or maybe the business has had a really hard time and they're having to invest in their SEO a lot more, or maybe they're trying to pull back budget because of different reasons around finances or anything like that, really be empathetic around these different areas. But of course, use that almost to your advantage as well. So you can be empathetic, but then also showing them the reasons why investing in SEO and doing the different things that you want them to do is actually going to benefit them in the long run and help them to avoid these challenges or face these challenges. Set accurate expectations. Now, a lot of the time, people who are not experts in SEO will say things like, you are guaranteed results or guaranteed keyword positions on the top 3 within a month's time, or you will rank for the word dress in 2 weeks. Things like that. They're not accurate expectations. Setting those accurate expectations and being able to manage that and being able to say to clients, this is where you are, this is where we want you to get to, and these are the things that we're going to do. And then set a realistic time frame for those things to happen. That's going to really showcase yourself as an expert, much more than over-deliver it or over-promising things that you can't deliver. And also on top of this, don't be afraid to say no. And this is something that particularly junior SEOs really struggle with, because a lot of the time we're always taught customers and clients are always right, but they're not. And being able to say no and saying and really kind of setting again that expectation and not allowing them to extend budgets and not allowing them to kind of really take you for granted and take what you're trying to do for granted is going to help to position you much more of an expert. And they're probably going to respect you a lot more for that than if you're continually bending over backwards for them. Now, of course, you don't want to jeopardize the relationship when you are doing things like no, and you don't want to continually do this, because they're probably going to then go and look for someone else who might be a little bit easier to work with. But ultimately, don't be afraid to say no in the right circumstance. And this is a really important thing. Not everyone cares about what your job title is. And not everyone cares about what events you've spoken at before or how many years you've been in the industry. Sometimes people care more about proof than the things that you tell them. And to be fair, I think a lot of us do in our everyday lives as well. And this is where we do a lot of comparisons and we do a lot of digging around and looking at reviews and looking at different things, whether that's a telephone company or whether that's something that you want to purchase. You want proof. And the same goes for what we do in SEO. So how can you show that? Case studies, testimonials, brand PR, if you're a business trying to really showcase yourself as a brand, and being really visible in the industry as well. But it's really important as well that you're showing something that is relevant to the person at the receiving end of it. Now, relevancy, as we know in SEO, is important for so many different areas, whether that's link building or whether that's content and keyword insertion and all of these different things. But when it comes to showcasing us as individuals or as a business, as an agency, as an SEO, if you're showcasing a client who potentially is in the health industry, something completely irrelevant as a case study, they're going to probably think, you don't get my business at all. You don't understand what we're talking about. You don't understand where we want to be. Now, you don't necessarily have to match industry to industry when you're showing case studies to clients. For example, it's a health prospect coming to you. You don't necessarily have to show a health case study if you don't have one. If you do have one, then great. But it could be a small health business, a small medium enterprise, and you may have a small SME case study that you can show them. It could be a huge enterprise, large e-commerce website. You may have another e-commerce website that matches that. Really be very clever with how you showcase this relevancy, but be as specific as you possibly can be. And that will really help to showcase you as an expert in what you're talking about and the industry as a whole. So the next bit that I want to talk about is effective reporting. And this is something, if you follow me on Twitter or on LinkedIn, you may have seen I've done quite a lot of articles about effective reporting and how important reporting is for SEOs. Ultimately, I believe that reporting can make or break your working relationship. It's the one tangible thing that a client will get in a very intangible industry. And really understanding that and showcasing that to clients is something that's going to help to build trust and get you the buy-in. So how can we report on SEO much more effectively? Well, step one is to define the depth of your reporting by who you're delivering the reports to. Again, this is a really common theme of all of these stages that I've kind of spoken you through so far. It's that personalization aspect. Who is going to be receiving them? Who is at the other end of the line? What is their knowledge? What is their experience? What are they looking for? As an example, a CEO is going to be much more interested in where his money is going or her money is going. Where is that investment going? What's it going into? And what am I getting out of that? That's probably more or less all they will really care about and all they want to see. They might want to see a few traffic figures and things like that, but anything much more granular than these different areas is probably not going to keep their attention for too long. However, if you're talking to a marketing expert, they might want to go and really deep dive into the data and look not necessarily just at traffic and ROI and revenue or conversion rates. They might want to look into what's the top conversion paths? How is SEO feeding into all of these other different channels? If you can define the reporting and the level of depth you go into by the person you're delivering the reports to and actually personalizing this, and again, this is something I don't see from agencies very often, is that personalization aspect. Well, then you're going to lose people and they're not going to necessarily understand what it is. If you can define the depth of your reporting by who you're delivering that to and you do personalize it properly, that's when you're really going to start to see much bigger improvements in terms of the buy-in you're getting, simply because people will have a better understanding of what it is you're doing and what are the results that you're driving. Step 2, keep your report only as detailed as it needs to be. Avoid fluff. Avoid adding in metrics that mean absolutely nothing. Avoid talking about things that people don't care about just because it makes you look smart. If you're delivering a report that is just not understandable and it is just full of page after page after page of numbers and detail, which is fantastic for you internally and it's something you may use in order to analyze things, it's probably not going to land too well on the other end. So really just balance that aspect. Step 3, match the data that you're showing to business goals. Really have a clear understanding of what it is you're trying to achieve and what you're working towards. And this is something that should always be asked on, well, as part of the sales process, but if that's failed to kind of really be outlined, then that's something as part of an onboarding process you should always include. What does success look like to you? And when it comes to your reporting, well, you can match your data and the things that you're showing to the client who've already outlined what those business goals are to you, to those business goals and objectives. So you can tell a really nice story. You can really showcase to them, we understand why you need SEO and what your reasons for doing so is. Here's the strategy based on your business goals, and these are the results and how they match to the business goals that you had when it comes to that reporting aspect. Step 4, provide actionable insights and recommendations with your data. So a lot of the times I will see reports, whether that's pulled from a third-party tool or whether that's pulled through maybe a Looker Studio dashboard, maybe that's something that's generated on an Excel spreadsheet, PowerPoint presentation, whatever it is. A lot of the time you get all of your data and you get keyword rankings and you'll get traffic stats and you'll get all of these different things, but there's no insights and there's no kind of write-up as to what that information actually means and how that links to anything that you're doing. Sometimes it's just a pile of numbers. So if you can provide really actionable insights that detail what the data is actually showing, and then recommendations on these are the things that we think can be improved, or these are areas that of new opportunities that we can kind of really capture based on what this data is showing us. Well, these are areas that actually aren't performing as well as what we thought they were going to. That honesty, that trust, transparency is all going to really help with building that relationship with your client, communicating with the client, and ultimately getting that buy-in further down the line. Having real actionable insights and recommendations is a must with all of your reporting. And step 5, make sure your report tells a story. So again, going back to that key aspect of communication, of telling a story, show them the journey, show them why they came to you, what you've done, and what you've achieved since. And then also how that can be further improved, because clients will never invest in SEO because they just want to hit one ceiling. They want to continue to grow, they want to continue to develop, they want to capture new opportunities. And actually SEO can really help with much bigger business propositions and helping to capture new areas and new markets over time if done properly. So if you're detailing in your report how that all aligns with their business goals, where they were when they were initially benchmarked to where they are now, and having some recommendations of what the next steps are as well, then that's really going to help them to understand the whole journey and what it is that you've been doing. So the key takeaways from today's webinar that I'd really like everyone to really think about and maybe take away into their SEO and their kind of client communication ongoing is personalized communication based on who you're communicating with. If that's a CEO, that understanding is more than likely going to be very top level. Now, that is a huge generalization because I know many CEOs who actually have a very good understanding of SEO, but really personalizing that based on their knowledge aspect and what it is they know, what it is they want to achieve, and how you can tie all of that together with reporting, with your monthly deliverables, with your monthly QBRs, your quarterly business reviews, all of these different areas will really help you to build that relationship and build trust. Use SEO testing to back up your hypotheses and then actually make data-led decisions rather than just going full steam ahead and not really being sure what the impact is. This will really, again, help you to build trust because it's hard for business decision makers to actually say no to something where all of the data points to a yes. Be honest, be transparent, and be open at all times, even potentially when things are going wrong. Business leaders and people in really kind of any marketing position and any position within a business know that things aren't always going to go right all the time. And there can be multiple reasons for this. That could be an algorithm update. But of course, there's only so many times that you can blame an algorithm update before it becomes just very bad SEO strategy. It could also be anything to do with the economy, or it could be to do with the market. It could just be to do with seasonality and time of year. Be open, because sometimes there's things that the clients on the other end of the line can actually help you with and can give you more insights with. If the reason why things aren't going quite your way is because you may have a barrier in place with their dev team or with their PR team or their marketing team, they might be able to help you break them down a little bit more if they're really bought into what it is you're trying to do. So be open, be transparent, but of course be very aware of the potential repercussions of if things are going very badly. You need to have a real action plan of how to turn that around. Don't just tell people you're an expert, show them. Show them with case studies, show them with testimonials, but make sure all of those different areas are really relevant to them. And take reporting seriously. It's one of the things I'm very passionate about, and it can really help to make or break trust and buy-in, and it can be a real good form of communication, particularly if you can't get that person at the other end of the line. Thank you so much for your time and for listening.
Oh, thanks a lot. Thanks for sharing your approaches, tips, and ideas. It was extremely useful. And let me add that Serpstat also has solutions to help in communication with your clients, guys. At the very early stages, it can be site audit tool. You can carry out a comprehensive automated technical SEO audit and use Serpstat detailed recommendations to show them to your clients. And you can schedule automatic checks and monitor if the number of issues found is decreasing, and track the growth dynamics of the site's optimization level. Then custom reports will help, branded and white label ones. You can combine the key data point into a custom ad hoc report, use build templates, or create your own ones. And you can share reports with clients or anyone, even without a Serpstat account. It's available to schedule your recurring reports to clients and colleagues. And this is in addition to 50 plus tools to speed up solving a wide range of search marketing tasks. You can automate daily tasks to keep the work working even when you are on vacation. So, then let's answer some questions from our audience. Guys, please leave your questions in the live chat. We still have some time before answering them. And let's get started with the questions you guys sent us before the webinar. Then the first question is, how do you handle difficult conversations or disagreements with SEO clients?
So this is something I really love. Actually, I love handling real tough kind of conversations. So again, having data that backs up your point, really actually listening to what the issue and the concern is before trying to bulldoze a client. And that's something they don't like. They don't like being bulldozed. They don't really want you to turn around and try and make everything better. Sometimes they just want to vent and they just want to have a bit of a go at you about something or other. Most of the time, it's not even your fault. Kind of just let that happen, let them vent, let them talk about what it is that they've got a problem with, or potentially it's been a really difficult conversation, like, I don't know, maybe they need to pull budget for any particular reason, things like that. Really stand your ground with showcasing yourself as the expert with all of the points that I showed earlier, but then just letting them vent, showcasing yourself as the expert, and then coming with real data-led decisions and kind of previous experiences to say things like, if they, for example, do want to pull back budget, if he was to pull back budget, Mr. Client, this could be the X, Y, and Z impact of that. And really just relate to that, be empathetic, but also just showcase to them all of the different reasons as to why maybe they're not thinking in the right way and in the same way that you are. And just having that balanced debate.
Great, many thanks. Okay, and when you have multiple SEO clients to communicate with, how do you prioritize and manage the tasks?
So I think a lot of the time this is done at kind of an agency level. It's kind of done at a higher level as opposed to the individual SEO manager. What I would say is a rule of thumb is don't always give the clients who shout the loudest the most attention, because most of the time they actually have the smaller budgets. So you need to really balance budget versus kind of their demand and set those expectations of that communication and of what deliverables they are going to be getting at the initial stages of a campaign. So that can be done as part of the strategy process. That could be done as part of the initial onboarding. It really does depend on how the agency or how the business works from start to finish. But just bearing that in mind, a lot of the time it should be prioritized based on budget. The clients who pay the most should get the most time, should get the most attention, should get more hours and kind of more deliverables. But the people who shout the loudest are typically the ones who are the smaller budget. So really just balance that.
Thanks. It makes sense. So let's turn to the questions in the chat. Question from Vlad. Hi, could you share your tips on how to manage client expectations around the timeline and results of SEO campaigns? You touched that, and maybe you can add something on highlights.
Yeah, so I think it's always really difficult with SEO campaigns to kind of map out an exact timeline. A lot of the time this is done as part of a sales process, and 9 times out of 10 it causes difficult conversations down the line, particularly if the sales team are not SEOs or they're just kind of trying to get business across the line just to kind of hit their targets. When it comes to managing those expectations of results more so, you can do SEO forecasting, and there's a bunch of different resources that I can kind of share, and I'll share on my Twitter and share after this, that can give you a bit of a template of how to do this. Sometimes it can be a little bit funny because it can be to do with click-through rates. It could be to do with kind of where your keywords are ranking and the click-through rate of that position and search volumes and things like that. But it can give you quite a nice benchmark, really, of things to work towards. And in terms of timeline, just kind of use common sense around that. So of course, every single site's going to be very different because they're going to be starting from a different point of their within the campaign. So it could be that you've got 2 very similar sites, but one's got really poor technical health and one's got great technical health but a really poor backlink strategy and different things like that. But you'll typically know, based on your work previously within an industry or within a type of site or a size of site, how long it's taken for that to really achieve results based on a similar strategy. So you can kind of put that benchmark in place. I mean, I know a lot of agencies and a lot of people will say 6 to 12 months, but again, it really does just depend on the individual website itself.
Yeah. And what elements should regular SEO client reports include?
So I did actually write an article about this. I think it's pinned to the top of my Twitter profile. But what I would suggest with all SEO client reports is just make sure you're matching the business goals. Normally that's traffic, revenue, or conversions. It could be engagement or brand visibility, depending on what it is they're trying to achieve. I like visibility graphs, I like traffic, and I like conversions or revenue as kind of my main 3 benchmarks, just because it's really what we're trying to drive as SEOs, right? We're trying to drive more visits to a website, we're trying to drive more visibility and keyword visibility, and we're trying to drive ultimately the end goal of more sales or more leads. So they're normally the 3 things I like to include as standard, but just always match it up, because I've found previously an e-commerce website would not actually focus or care about sales. They cared about their brand visibility, and the SEO report was just focusing on their product sales. So they weren't getting what they wanted out of that report. So just always match that up with what those objectives of the campaign is.
Okay. And what do you do when you don't know the answer to the client's questions?
I don't think there's any harm in saying you don't know, but obviously phrasing that in a way that still makes you sound very intelligent and very kind of like you're actually still going to help them ultimately, because that's what they're looking for. Now, I've had this in the past myself, where I've had SEO clients ask me questions about PPC, or ask me questions about a really very, very hard development question about a very niche CMS that I'd never used before. So most of the time you might have a team around you that you can kind of reference to and say, you know what, that isn't my area of expertise. However, I can direct you to the right person, or I can find out for you and I'll come back to you. And actually being honest with clients and not trying to kind of give them a load of fluff about what you think the answer might be, but you're not 100% sure, normally goes south more, because you seem like you don't understand very, very easily. So being upfront, being honest about it, showcasing that, yeah, it isn't necessarily your area of expertise, but you can find out for them, or even just pointing them in the right directions. If you don't have someone else to ask, you can just do a quick Google, go online, maybe find some resources and send them to the client as well, and just try and point them in the right way.
Okay, thanks. So doesn't have to know everything.
Don't think anyone does, right?
Absolutely. A question from Drew. Share more about testing. Other than testing the tag, making sure things aren't broken, I could see staging, local, etc. Are you saying you test with live pages? What if it goes south?
So I wouldn't test with live pages unless it's something very minor, like maybe a page title or something that you're then monitoring. With testing, this is something that tools like SEOtesting.com can help you with. And that could be things around content, that can be things around, like I said, metadata changes, design tweaks, A/B split testing these different areas. So definitely check out SEOtesting.com. There's a bunch of use cases and a bunch of case studies on there that can just give you a bit more insight into things you can test and how you can test them just using that platform. And there's a bunch of other testing tools out there as well. Like I mentioned, Google Optimize hopefully doesn't sunset, but it's meant to be in September, and a bunch of others out there too.
Great. And one more question. I write SEO content for my clients. How do I get the data and performance analytics on my work when I don't have access to their site's backend?
So ask for access is probably the first place to start. In terms of the back end, I assume you mean the website back end. If you can get Google Analytics information or data, or even get them to pull reports for you if they won't give you that access. Or you can use maybe a third-party tool just to kind of give you a bit of an insight into performance, such as traffic or kind of keyword visibility, anything like that. I'm sure Serpstat's got plenty of different tools and things that you can use to really measure that performance as well.
Great. And what's a good resource to learn more about SEO, possibly a book or a website?
So my favorite resource that I love to recommend to everyone, and has actually just been revamped, is Aleda Solis's learningseo.io. It's fantastic. It has everything that you need to know about SEO, from client management through to content, technical, offsite, digital PR, different CMSs and different guides and things like that through there. So again, I'll post this all out, but that's definitely the best one for you to go to. Just as it collates everything that you need to know, all of the different guides from all over the web.
Thank you. So it looks like we've covered all the questions. Let's wrap this up. Sophie, would you like to add or highlight anything before the end?
It's just been an amazing experience. Thank you so much for having me, and for everyone for joining and all of your amazing questions. I hope that everyone got something to take away from today. And of course, I'm always available for questions or follow-ups or anything like that if there is anything else that you would like to ask. But just follow me on Twitter at Sophie Brannon. It's probably the channel I use the most and probably most active on. So you can find me over there.
Oh, thanks a lot. I'd like to remind our attendees to follow Sophie's and Serpstat social media, and don't hesitate to ask questions. And join Serpstat chat on Twitter to learn more about SEO and latest trends, and join our future webinars. Thanks again for such an insightful presentation, Sophie. Thanks for your answers, tips, and examples. I enjoyed listening to them all, and the questions you asked and engagement, guys, were great. Thank you for participation. So take care and have a great week ahead. Goodbye.
Thank you so much, Alina. Bye-bye.